Hey y'all, okay, so we are in our workbook. If you go to Unit 3, Lesson 7, I'm not sure what page it is, but pause the video and find it. We're going to be skipping around a lot between Lesson 7 and Lesson 8. We're only going to do a couple sections from there, okay? So go ahead, pause the video and find that. Alright, so we're not going to do 7.1 or 7.2. We're going to skip this page. We're going to skip this page. I know y'all are mad at me. Get over it. And we're going to go to 7.3, okay? So this is just a reminder of how to find the slope from a line, okay? So we are trying to calculate the slope of A, B, and C, all right? For each graph, we have to record the vertical change. Vertical change, as you know, is just the change in Y. And horizontal change is the change in X, as we've been doing. And we know slope is change in Y over change in X. So if we're looking at A, the change in Y, let's label my points. Let's label all my points X and Y. Before we get started, I'm going to label everything X and Y. All right, so if we're looking at A, what's my vertical change? What's my change in Y? I go from 3 to 9. So my change is, you should say, 6. My horizontal change, I go from 1 to 4, right? 1 to 4. That is a change of 3. So my slope is 6 over 3, which is also 2. 6 over 3 is 2 when you simplify. Let's do the same thing. So this is A. Let's do the same thing for B. My vertical change, so I go from 1.5 to 3.5, right? Those are my change in Y's. 1.5 to 3.5, that's a change of 2. And then for my horizontal change, I go from 2 to 10. That's a change of 8. So 2 over 8, both divisible by 2, is 1/4. Because change in Y over change in X. So now let's look at C. My vertical change, I gotta look at my Y points. 35 to 75, that vertical change is 45. 10 to 30, that horizontal change, right, because my change in X's is 20. All right, seen that? It's 20. So change in Y is 45 over my change in X is 20. They're both divisible by 5. So I get 9 over 4. All right? And that's just showing us how to find the slope if given 2 points. Remember, if you have 2 points, you can create a table. You're just finding how the difference in the Y's over the difference in the X's. So we're going to skip this and we're going to move on to lesson 8. We're going to skip this and we're going to do 8.2. All right, 8.2. All right, so we have a graph here and it's about Diego. Let's read question 1. So Diego earns $10 per hour babysitting. Assume that he has no money saved before he starts babysitting and plans to save all of his earnings. So he doesn't have any money. He starts babysitting. He makes $10 an hour and he's saving his $10 every hour. All right. Graph how much money Y he has after X hours of babysitting. So we can see here that X represents hours and Y represents dollars. Okay. If I wanted to graph this, I could 1, write an equation. B, create a table. C, both. So let's try both. If I wanted the equation, I know that Y equals mx plus B. I know Diego, B is the y-intercept, right? It's how much he starts with. He starts with $0. So my B would be 0. But then he's making $10 per hour. This per is telling me what the slope of my line would be. It's telling me it's changing by 10 every hour. X is hours. So my equation would be Y equals 10x, right? So I can create a table and plug in these numbers. So let me make a table over here for y'all to see. So X, Y, X we said is hours, Y we said is dollars saved. So at 0 hours, before he starts babysitting, how much money did it say he had? 0, right? After 1 hour, 10 times 1, he has $10. After 2 hours, 2 times 10, 20. 3 hours, 30, so on and so forth, right? And I can graph these points. 0, 0. At 1 hour, he has $10, 2, 20, and I keep going. Right? So I just wrote an equation. I graphed it. And I'm good to go. And as you can tell, my slope is I rise 10, I go over 1, 10 over 1 is 10. That's the slope we found, okay? So now it's saying, imagine Diego, he had $30 before he started saving, right? So now instead of his initial point being being 0, it's now 30. Y equals mx plus b. So his slope is still $10 because he's still making $10 per hour. But his b now is 30. Y equals 10x plus 30. That's different. So I'm going to create a table down here with it. X, Y. We know X is hours. Y is dollars saved. All right. Can y'all see that? Nope. X is hours, Y is dollars saved. So at 0 hours, before he starts babysitting, if I plug in 0 for X, that's 10 times 0, which is 0 plus 30. He has $30. Remember, that's your y-intercept, and your y-intercept always has a 0 for the X. All right, over here, my y-intercept was 0, the X was 0. All right, after 1 hour, 10 times 1 is 10, plus 30 is 40, so he has $40 saved. After 2 hours, he has $50 saved. 3 hours, he should have $60 saved. 4 hours, he should have $70 saved, right? So let's graph that. So at 0, he has $30. So he's starting with $30 now. And then for 1 is 40, 2 is 50, 3 is 60, 4 is 70, because he's making an additional $10 for every hour he works, right? And this kind of looks like a translation. This was translated down 30, right? Translation is kind of plain to here too, right? So let's look at this. Compare the second line, the third question. Compare the second line with the first line. How much more money does Diego have after 1 hour of babysitting? So at 1 hour, on this line at 1 hour, he has $10. But on this line, he has $40, so it's a $30 difference. So let's see, at 2 hours of babysitting. At 2 hours here, he has $20. But here, he has $50. That's a $30 difference. Okay, at 5 hours, he has $50 on this line. But on this line, he's making $80. That's still a $30 difference. So this plus 30 means that no matter how many hours he works, he's still going to have $30 more because he started off with $30, right? So for example, if I gave Brianna $30 and I gave Ayana nothing, but then they went and they worked for the same amount of money, Brianna's always going to have $30 more than Ayana has if they work the same amount of time because she started off with more money. All right, let's see. Yeah, let's look at this one. Let's look at 8.3. So it says the graph shows 2 lines. Line A goes through the origin 0, 0, meaning that's the y-intercept because the x point is 0. Line H is the image of line A under a translation. Select all of the equations whose graph is the line H. Let's look at H, right? For an equation of a line, we know it's written as y equals mx plus b. We need the m, we need the b. B is where this line crosses the y-axis. It crosses at -5. So we know b has to be -5. Now we need to find the slope. I can use this point and this point. Create a slope triangle. I rise 1 and run 4. So m is 1/4. So y equals 1/4 x minus 5. Because it's a -5, my b. Let's see which ones represent that. Does A? Yep. Does B? Nope. Does C? See, looks different, but it does, right? It's still y equals 1/4 x minus 5. They just flipped this with this, right? So C does. Let's see if D does. D says -5 plus 1/4 x. Whatever's in front of the x is always going to be the slope. Let me zoom in. Whatever is in front of the x is always going to be the slope. So just so y'all know, we were trying to find the equation of this line. That's what we were doing. We were trying to find the equation of that line. That's what we were doing. And we found out the m and the b. Maybe I moved too fast with that one. Okay, and we found out the b was -5. The slope was 1/4. Now D. So here my slope is 1/4 and my b is -5. Right? Because the number that's alone that doesn't have an x will always be your b. So yeah, D does work. Okay, E. Same thing. -5 by itself. 1/4 is my m. That does work. F. This is saying my slope here is -1/4. But that's not true. So does not work. Alright? So now Miss A is going to give y'all some practice problems so you can work on graphing lines and writing equations. Hope that helped.